So what I'm showing you here is one of my favorite podcasts. It's called Real Survival Stories. Oh, there go the dogs. And two is my salt drink, because all I've been doing is sweating yesterday, and almost every day this summer. Oh, so deep breath. I will see you on the other side. Day, and I am so glad you're here. I just need to do a caveat. The two dogs are in the background. You can see the camera shaking because one of them is itching. There's only so much I can control, so we're just going to move forward, and there it goes. Maybe he'll stop. So today I want to talk about this idea that I've talked about a million times before, but I want to bring it up for a couple reasons. And you can see that in the title, is the marriage between the sacred and survival from a woman's point of view. And the reason I want to caveat that one thing from a woman's point of view is that there's a couple things that have gone on with my personal survival journey, and I'm trying to sort of shift into these ideas of more of kind of a healing spiritual component. But I wanted to just spend a moment about why this survival journey has been so important to support me in my own personal spiritual seeking. And there's a lot of things that have gone on with that, and probably the most important thing that I have gotten from this. And, you know, you're asking yourself, why do I care? I think we should care because I think there's a huge chasm between those who think about their survival and those who think about spiritual things. And I think they're the same things, and they need to come together. But for me, my stress has been they're two different communities. Like, people who are super survivally aren't that spiritual, and people who are super spiritual kind of think the grocery store will be there forever. So, but the most important thing, if we can take a deep breath and back up and say it's not about fear. But I think what's so fascinating for me is I would say, you know, my survival hasn't been, you know, me pitching a tarp in the boondocks, you know, bushcrafting it, you know, for 6 months at a time. It's really been kind of living on the edge. You know, I feel like I can say I've been camping for 12 years. So I've had multiple incarnations about how hardcore I've been to more of a survival. But I've been without real electricity for several years now. I haven't had plumbing for like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. So I kind of live on the edge, but I don't sleep outside. That's sort of the one thing I'm not that comfortable doing. I don't like snakes, and there's just a part of me that likes some kind of firm wall between me and anything else that might be creeping around. So that's kind of been my bottom line. I'm just not, I have tents, but I don't really like to sleep in tents that much. Plus I'm old and the ground is too hard. But that said, it's taught me so much. And so, you know, I really started my life, you know, at 12, 13, asking spiritual questions. And I really charged down the spiritual path for a very long time until my 20s, when I realized spirituality wasn't enough to help me heal. It wasn't enough to explain my world, and it wasn't working for me. You know, I had misunderstood the word forgiveness for doormat. You know, was probably the simplest way to put it. And so I wanted to change. And that's when I started exploring nutrition and body chemistry and hormones and posture with personal training and, you know, physical fitness, and then mental and brain waves, and then, you know, emotional intelligence and energy. And it's just been, you know, it was a free-for-all for a very long time. But I was still physically collapsing in the system, you know, the corporate normal world, you know, 2 cars, a house, a mortgage, you know, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't my thing. I didn't fit. I was unhappy. I was miserable. I knew all this stuff, but I didn't know enough. I'd had a lot of healing, a lot of the things that plagued me in my teens and 20s and 30s, my depression, a lot of my craziness and my energy, my blood sugar stabilized, stopped being a vegetarian. There was a lot of things that were good. So it wasn't, all bad. But I sort of peaked at a point where, as I was a social worker and a therapist, and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't be, the energy is so toxic. And it wasn't even, the clients, it was the system was so toxic. It was nothing about caring about anybody. As I left, and through that transition of leaving, at some point, I started to ask myself this question: what does it mean to be responsible for our personal survival? And the reason that's such an important question is the one thing I learned as a social worker is that we wouldn't have the need for social work if everybody took personal responsibility for their lives. It would drive me crazy because nobody was interested. Everybody just wanted someone else to fix their problems. Whether I was at a really rich facility or I was at a really poor facility, the theme was always, what are you going to do for me? Nothing, there's nothing I can do. So it was extremely frustrating, and I left. And so I embarked on what's now close to a 15-year journey of downsizing, starting to let things go, which has been a 15 years journey. Letting go, decluttering is an understatement, right? And trying to figure out how to live in the world in a way that resonated with me, but also answered this primary question: what does it mean to be responsible for our survival? And I left with a lot of delusions. YouTube was still very young, so I wasn't, manipulated by everybody's fake, everything's awesome off-grid fantasy videos or fantasy RV videos. I was trailer trash. There was no RV life or van life. There was just trailer trash or snowbirds. Those were the two people. But I left in a little trailer with all my worldly belongings and embarked on this journey trying to find my place in the world, find, homesteading or on a farm or in a small community. And I had all these, la ideas about what that meant. And I was, it was rough the first couple of years, trying to get my feet underneath me and figure out where I fit, and understanding that it's so much work to just survive, meaning if you really have delusions about 100% independence, you're full of delusions, and being blessed with all these different experiences. And to me, that's my gold. It's not money, it's not fame, it's not status, it's experience and time. And I got those in huge amounts. I got tons of experiences, tons of my own time. And this question, about what does it mean to be personally responsible for my own survival, what I learned is it's impossible. You can't really do it by yourself. It takes a community. And then I learned it's almost impossible to find a community because people have lost the ability to work together. And so, I've kind of gave all that up and then said, well, I'm going to learn what it means to be 100% off grid. And so then I went hardcore, like chop wood, carry water. And then I made a video about how that broke me. I just am so physically tired, and it's 24/7. And it's not 24/7, but it's a lot of work. So the harder and closer you get to nature to survive, the more work it is, depending on, the climate you're in. Tropical island full of fish and fruit, maybe not so bad. But winter, below zero, really hard work. But the thing that I learned across all of that was this really interesting experience in which my spirituality sort of morphed into my relationship with nature. And even more importantly, was how I was as human in the system of nature. And what I really learned about what's so important in both the spiritual seeking and the survival living is they both require such a level of discipline and vigilance. And that feels like a heavy negative thing, but what it really means is what I've been talking about in my Sunday videos is focus and accountability. It's paying attention. You don't have the luxury of not paying attention to your surroundings and to the elements and working with the elements instead of fighting them or controlling them, of being extremely responsible in all my actions in terms of paying heightened attention to my feet in case there's snakes. And what most people don't get about the spiritual path is it requires that same level of mental, emotional discipline in paying attention to how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. And so, it really showed me that so much of who we are as wired up to be human is the same things that we need to be connected in the emotional and spiritual world. But these two communities kind of, sorry, my camera's doing something. I think I might be out of battery. These two different things. I don't know what it's doing. So anyways, and so it was kind of this amazing process that's emerged, over my almost 15 years of this very different kind of lifestyle. And the reason I showed you that podcast, The Real Survival Stories, is it's just every story to me emphasizes the incredible importance and value of how one tiny decision, and like everything goes wrong. And we live in this kind of false sense of security that somehow everything magically will be okay spiritually, and everything will magically be okay physically, without any real awareness about how much is required of us to truly be engaged in both the spiritual and the survival, which is, basic needs: food, water, shelter, safety, community, environments. And there's total overlap. And so I have never known how to talk about both things, even though in so many ways they're the same thing. And, I think it's really hard when people look at how I live. Well, why don't you want to go back into a house? And, I miss hot showers, I miss electricity, and I miss real internet. I just do. I don't miss, endless taxes, regulations, rules, congestion, noise, and all this other stuff. So I haven't found a perfect way to live in this world, but I have found that both worlds have something to teach me about being a better human and a more powerful spirit. And I think if more of us could find that overlap, I think our ancestors did. I think that's something that would be incredibly beneficial for us to get back to. So I've been, struggling with these two sides of me, and, neither sides really likes each other. But maybe I need to start talking about it. So, my work with you, when I talk about healing ourselves as women, isn't for everybody to go like bushcrafting out in the middle of nowhere, or for spiritual people to leave their communities. But it's really to open ourselves to being more physical and human, and at the same time more in touch with nature as spiritual, energetic beings. And there's just this magic that happens that you can't explain to anybody, and you can't plan on it. Like, you can't plan on when you open the door, at 4 a.m. and the moon is in this perfect position, and the, saguaro and the mountains and the stars and the magic of all that moment. I can't take a picture of it. I can never recreate it. You just can't plan your experiences with the spiritual unless you're in nature to experience it. And because I've spent so much time there, I've had this really magical thing happen that I rarely talk about. But at the same time, the survival is fascinating, because you can't really appreciate being clean unless you have one shower a year. You can't appreciate food unless you've really been hungry. You can't really appreciate thirst unless you don't have any water. I mean, it's this magic that happens in this intersection between survival and spirituality. And I wanted to just get that out there because it's such a real thing for me. I don't see it really talked about in a way that makes sense the way I've experienced it. And I think it's a real loss for us as women and the feminine to reconnect with that real mystical, spiritual nature, not in a fantasy, I'm in robes and I'm a goddess stuff. I mean, at a real practical level, because nobody can plan, you know, that 4 a.m. moment outside with the moonlight. It just happens. So with that, I just want to leave you that idea. All my links are below, and I hope you have a fabulous day, and I will see you next time. That's even if the camera's still running. I'm not even sure that.